Do we look okay? More light, less light? Just someone say yes.
Yeah.
We look great. Let's bring the house music down, Raymond.
Oh yeah. Well, this is a nice way to segue into our conversation.
Did everyone enjoy that?
Yes. Classic.
Who saw this 14 years ago when we first showed it? Great. Excellent. First question for the both of you. One thing that always baffles me about portrait documentaries, being a failed portrait documentarian myself, because my subject dropped it at the last minute, what on earth made you decide to do this?
Gail.
Gail.
Gail O'Hara, she underplays herself in the movie, but she's actually a very, very close friend, and she sort of Stephen's employer, and she followed us around, and she also inspired. She was also our photographer, so she was everywhere. Is that you, Alex? Oh, she's here. Anyway, so yeah, Gail was there.
Was there any reluctance at all, or the grand?
Oh yeah, we made them give us all approval, right?
Really?
Yes. Claudia was especially adamant that we were not doing anything whatsoever without final approval.
Wow. That's extremely rare.
We're rare.
I just think it's amazing that you approved that, because there were moments in there where, I don't know.
I wanted drama.
That was there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, you were way ahead of the cancel culture curve by a good 6 or 7 years.
Thank you. New York Times articles about whether or not you're a racist.
I have a salacious story which won't leave this room, but Jessica Hopper worked for me very briefly as an usher. Is anyone Jessica's friends here? We might cut this out for the podcast, but she was let go rather immediately when she returned from the Village Voice holiday party at SOB's, puking in the women's room. She was so drunk. So, your friend Jessica is doing great.
Well, the internet did exist at that time, and it did do its harm. I remember 24 hours later getting emails from people saying, this is sort of quaint, I'm burning all of my CDs.
No, you didn't.
I got the next morning, I got, it's just like one, but anyway, I got an email from a fan saying I'm burning all my CDs, and I was like, what's this about? I actually didn't know yet, and but it was great. The trajectory of that was extremely flash in the pan. It was but boy, it had a lot of legs very quickly. It was on the front page of the Arts and Leisure section of the Times, and the front page of the Guardian Arts section within a week, because it was a big story. And then John Cook, bless him, wrote this wonderful piece for Slate. If you don't like rap, does it make you a racist? Right. And all of these people who'd been, I'm burning my records, I don't know, sort of was like, ah. But another thing that happened was that all these people.
I never said I didn't like rap. I just said I didn't keep up with it.
I don't even know if you even talked about rap. It just became the story.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was interesting was that I think people started to look at themselves. Like indie bands were going, wait, is somebody going to come look at my record collection and add up how many records I have? So there was a lot of whoa. This is getting.
Are there black people on SST?
Yeah.
Are there black people on 4AD?
Yeah.
So it just felt a little bit like, well, this is, and I said this at the time, and I agree with it now, that I think it was a good conversation. I'm glad it happened. I don't think it should have happened at the expense of Stephin Merritt. I think it's a good conversation to have. Let's have this conversation about genre. I mean, Stephin famously has talked about it for years.
The whole problem was that I was actually willing to talk about it, and so I got leaked on.
No, very few of you probably know this, or none, but he had Starbucks had quotes for a while? There was a quote from Stephin on a Starbucks cup, and it was about this. It was about race categorization in music, and he said something like, are you gonna remember it? So if you went into a bookstore,
I think if you went into a bookstore and the books were sorted by the race of the author, as they are in a record store, you'd be shocked.
Yeah, and the fact that we walk into record stores and it's like R&B versus rock or gospel versus country. I mean, these are such racially tinged now slightly less, thankfully, the country's getting a little more diverse, I guess, but in general, pretty racially segregated, and so he was saying that on that Starbucks cup years before this all happened, so it was a little frustrating. It was definitely like,
Good thing there are other aspects of the movie that we could discuss.
Would you like that, Stephen?
let's do that.
Well,
There's lighting, there's mise en scène,
Fassbinder.
there's dialogue.
What's your favorite film forum festival you've ever been to? I know it's gonna be a hard one.
Oh, that's easy, because the only one I remember is the one I was just at last month, which is the Japanese Horror Festival.
There you go.
My friendship, if we could call it that, with the two of you began when I was sitting in the box office after everything that I talked about during my introduction, and the full band came in to see an afternoon screening of Blue Velvet.
Of course.
And my mind was blown and I was starstruck.
I have no memory of that.
Yeah, I've never going to a movie with the full band before, but good on us.
Yeah.
Let's go do that.
So speaking of potentially vulnerable situations to put yourself in, why the tour now, 25 years later, and was that a difficult decision or a relatively easy one?
Well, as methods of suicide go, touring is pretty respectable.
I said to Stephen, in 2 or 3 years before what would have been the 20th anniversary, I said we should do this for the 20th, and Stephen said nobody celebrates 20th. Remember this? You celebrate the 25th. And I said, but I'm gonna be in my like mid-late 50s by then. I was so worried.
Wear makeup.
And it actually wasn't the worst idea, because the 20th would have been like on top of COVID, like it was right at the beginning of COVID, so that actually probably was not the worst thing.
Definitely.
Anyway, I mean, we're tired now, but I think, it's good.
Well, I asked Stephen when he came in if he was tired, and you said yes, because you're in the midst of a big residency, but you also mentioned the rehearsal process, and I imagine that's been a long one.
Yeah, we
exhausting.
failed to front load the rehearsals, and that meant that we have been rehearsing 24 hours a day for a month.
Come see us at Town Hall. You can see us. We're playing Wednesday through Saturday at Town Hall. This is my effort to advertise.
Also, we forgot to mention earlier today on WNYC, but we are having a film screening at the Film Forum later today.
Also,
It's sold out.
another thing we want to tell you, that I know some of you are already coming to the shows this week, but tell your friends that there are not many tickets available, but there, for some reason, are a lot of tickets available for Thursday.
Who goes to shows on a Thursday?
So tell your friends, because it's weird.
Who wants to see Night 2 on a Thursday?
5 tickets left for Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and like 300 tickets left for Thursday. We do not know why. There may have been a problem with the internet. So if anybody was saying they wanted to go, come on Thursday!
Or just the law of averages is a convenient fiction.
Any questions? Oh wait, are we supposed to ask for questions? Or are we still talking?
Any questions?
I do have a list of questions, but we can jump to the audience soonish.
I do feel like, just sticking with this tour, the 25th anniversary tour, silver anniversary, that arrangements sounded much fuller and closer to the record than 25 years ago. Is that true, or am I
Well, there's 7, 8 of us on
Right.
stage, as opposed to 4 or 5 of us
more
on stage.
people playing instruments this time?
I was playing the triangle, for example.
And the triangle.
And 2 keyboardists, which isn't.
And oh, may I just say, Chris Ewan, Chris Ewan, people. Stand up, Chris Ewan is a huge hidden gem, a hidden variable of this new, of this new outfit, this incarnation of this tour, because Chris went and got all the original tracks from the old days and pulled all the drum sounds and all the weird little zzz, and sort of really filled it up, and it's delightful. It's amazing. So, Chris Ewan.
Sounded great from the balcony. Mix was wonderful.
Come on Thursday.
we ended the film, I don't know if you recall this, with you moving,
Credits, I saw
with the credits. Before that, you're moving to Los Angeles. So, can you give us broad strokes what has happened since Los Angeles?
Well, I moved back from Los Angeles 6 years later.
6 years later.
Yes. The silent movie theater, which I had gone to every, maybe 4 out of every 7 days, closed down, leaving me stranded with nowhere to eat that cupcake. I just had one, thank you. So I had to move back to New York to go to the film forum. But I did move to Hudson for 10 years in the meantime.
So are you permanently in a city man yet again, or are you still up there? Oh, okay. Great, welcome back.
Thank you. It's neat that New York has suddenly decided that trash cans exist. That's cool, because
That might depend on what neighborhood you're in.
yeah, the people haven't decided that, but the city has decided that
Okay, there
trash
we go.
cans exist.
There's the
And they're
clarification.
not going to fine you for putting your trash in them anymore.
What neighborhood are you in now with said trash cans?
The village.
And Claudia.
I'm in embarrassingly in that same apartment
The
that you
same one
saw
you've been
in,
in.
with all those nice trees.
How many years now?
I actually got a little nostalgic for those trees because they died. When that wonderful cat that you saw splayed across also died same year. I just think it was a connection.
The cat stopped watering the tree.
Highly likely, or the cat did water the trees. But anyway, so I started new trees and new cats, and I've been there for like 22 years. Really embarrassing. But anyway, yeah, still in Brooklyn. A tree regrows. A cat regrows.
Stephen and I spent a good part of COVID texting each other back and forth rare European disco songs. And you have a monthly party called Fuzzy at Rock Bar, which
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Oh, nowhere. And
Rock Bar won't even carry like cognac. I've given up on it.
way too far west. All the way up the river. What are we going to do while you're on tour? Will Fuzzy still continue every month?
Oh yeah. There are other people who can DJ at Nowhere.
Do you prefer playing music or playing music? I mean, you make far more money doing the former, I would suspect, than the
DJing
latter.
versus
Yeah.
playing live?
Singing
I
with the
think that one's
triangle.
obvious.
Really?
No, maybe it's not obvious.
Well, the great thing about DJing is you don't have to travel.
I'm assuming DJing, you like DJing.
No one is staring at you.
You have
Unfortunately,
another
they
DJ
only
night.
give you like $200 or something, but
Yes, financially it is better to perform live.
yeah.
Do you want to talk about a lot radio too? He also does another DJ night, 2 DJ nights.
Yeah. I DJ with Dave Hughes on the Lot Radio every 4th Monday. It's impossible to keep track of unless you're on our email list.
Does anyone have email in the room?
No. Not yet.
Let's take some questions from the audience in question form. Raise your hand and I'll come around. I have a wireless mic.
Brief
I will-
question form.
Brief question form. And I'll be running around, so give me a wait.
You might just be gesturing.
Who's first?
Yes, I,
My assistant, Rhett.
oh, yes, yeah, I guess full disclosure, okay. So I was,
Not technically a plant.
yeah. I was wondering if you felt like the, them trying to, like, call you a racist, was them really just code for, like, homophobia? And can you talk about the evolution of the press's homophobia over the years?
Not without being punished for it. So no.
Okay.
Short answer.
I have no way of knowing how linked homophobia and the accusations of racism are, how would I know?
Yeah.
I also spend a great deal of energy deliberately not thinking about it.
One right here.
First, thank you guys for everything. I just want, so I know that like, I
don't know this man.
I and Distortion and Realism, I know they form kind of like a informal like trilogy. Can you like maybe talk a little more about what, you know, whether that was intended from the beginning, whether that's something you fell into, and is there any sort of other like connections between any other of the albums in that same way?
That's a good question. Let's see, I'm trying to think of the other albums
Some of them
having
don't know.
connections. Well, so I don't know if the No Synths trilogy had been conceptualized at the making of I, was it? Did you say I'm not gonna use the synth?
Yeah, I
Okay.
decided to take a few years off from synthesizers because the technology had not changed, and I wanted to wait until it changed before I went back to it.
Yeah, so the album is directly after
I
6
should have
Jungle
done the same
Songs.
thing with guitars, but I didn't think of it.
Well, you still can.
Mm.
The record directly after 6 Jungle Songs is I, and that has no synthesizers on it, and then he goes on and makes Distortion, which sounds incredibly loud and has no synthesizers on it, and then he makes Realism, which is sort of a folk, fraternal twin.
Or
to
folk.
Or folk, to Distortion. And then synthesizers come back with the next record. So that was the trilogy. And then the second part of the question was, is there anything else you can kind of group that way?
Holiday and the Charm of the Highway
Yeah.
Strip form a natural pair.
Those are really early records.
They came out in the same month, accidentally.
By accident.
But they are both more or less concept albums about travel.
Right. That's a good one.
Stephen, they came out in the same month, but what was the length of
Holiday
time?
is after. I think Charm is before, 93. You record it in 93, you record Holiday after, then they both come out that next year or something like that.
No, other way around.
Holiday's
We
first.
recorded Holiday right after the House of Tomorrow EP, and it was delayed by Phil got all over records, and then it
Right.
finally came out
On top of Charm of Hazards.
in the same press cycle as
Yeah.
Charm of the Highway Strip.
Really.
Merge was furious.
So they became paired by bad
Laziness.
record label snafus, not, and conceptually to a certain degree. The first two albums also get packaged together. There is an interesting way that these things lumped. I don't think they were intended to lump, but they did, so.
Because the first two records, didn't those even come out after Charm and Holiday, or no?
So confusing.
Yes.
Sort of.
Kind of, no.
Okay. Well, it makes for legendary status, nonetheless. The confusion, that is. I'm gonna pass this down to another question.
Thanks, guys. Hi. I first became aware of your music when I was a child, and my parents showed me The Adventures of Pete and Pete, which is one of my favorite shows ever. And I was just curious, how did you guys get approached to be on the soundtrack and for that? And were you guys apprehensive at all for being like having your music on a children's show?
This is going back into the annals of memory that Stephen cannot access. I think it must have been post, songs, right?
No.
No?
Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
Sorry.
Early 90s.
Early 90s.
Who has a computer in there?
So anyway, this wonderful man named Will McRobb, must have been a fan, must have sent me a letter. I don't think there was anything internet-y. I feel like there were people in this
It
audience
might
who
have been
know
a
this story
fax.
better than I do.
He could have sent you a
Might have
fax.
sent me a fax or possibly called me on the telephone. And if it was really that long ago, I was
With a-
probably living in Boston. I mean, we're talking
dial,
about a long time ago. Yeah.
Telephone.
Anyway, no, the short answer is we didn't have an agenda with it being a kid's show back then, because I don't think we really, beggars can't be choosers, we were probably like, yay, something, Nickelodeon, money! I don't know, I always thought that it would have been great for Stephen, especially now, because there's so much interesting children's programming, to have done.
Apparently the rush of the golden age of children's programming has screeched to an abrupt halt.
Yes, it has.
So we would now be
Now
unemployed.
not. But there was a little era there in the last 10 years, I think. That would have been cool.
Children's television died immediately after prestige television, apparently.
Never went back here.
Hi, thank you. There's a scene in the film where you say that you're trying to sing like an expressionist character over the song. Have his films influenced your writing? If so, which ones?
Bresson?
Bresson? Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't hear the question.
He was singing by Bresson?
Yes.
Well, so.
Talk about Bressons.
When I was recording I, which is like I think part of this movie, I'm recording I.
Yes.
Mhm.
I had on the music stand in front of me both small books about or by Ozu and Bresson, because I was singing high near the top of my range to try and sound more pop, with the knowledge that I would be from there sped up 35 cents, which I always do when I don't want to sound like the Gothic Archies, because this is what I sound like when I talk. But this is what I sound like when I sing. And at first, and I was deliberately cultivating the extreme lack of affect that you see in both Ozu and Bresson. Ozu, because he did endless retakes until his actors were bored to tears, and he would say, "Just say the lines," and they would act and act and act and act, and finally they'd want to go home, and they would just say the lines, and he'd keep it. But Bresson had non-actors or amateur, unpaid, non-professional actors who were not used to pretending to have emotions they were not having at that moment. And he would say, "Go over there and say this line near the camera, try to face the camera, and then leave." And they would do that because they didn't have an agenda about showing off their acting skills. So that's what I wanted to have come out in my vocal style for that record.
It was weirdly the second time today we've talked about not emoting. We talked about it on the radio this morning.
Well, that's the
Thing.
house style.
The house style, and I get feels. Not emoting.
And I'll add to Ozu that despite dozens of takes, there's zero blocking and zero camera movement,
Yeah.
which probably comes in handy when you're sitting in one chair writing songs for 8 hours.
Yes. Also, if you tend to sit very near the screen of gigantic screens such as the Walter Reed, camera movement is really not fun.
Here's a question in the back.
You were talking about the synthesizer ban on the 3 albums, but I was curious, do you have a favorite synthesizer?
I don't have favorite things.
Which one do you like?
Okay, on my telephone basic screen that you see when you turn it on, whatever it's called, is my Buchla music easel, which I don't know if it's the synthesizer I like the sound of the most, but it definitely is the synthesizer I like the look of the most. It's very colorful and futuristically toy-like, and looks great as a telephone.
Nice.
Here's a question in the back.
I was wondering if you've ever thought about performing any of the older albums, like from the 90s, in full, and if not, like what do you love dessert?
That is an excellent question.
And
Thank
the
you for
answer is
asking.
no.
To be continued. Well, this year is a non-69 tour year, so people who aren't Stephin, who are the people who talk about Stephin, i.e. me and the booking agent, are having lots of conversations about what's gonna happen next. And one of the things that was floated was doing more album, like, you know, what the B-52s do or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
So.
Tell them the highway
You have
strip.
something to talk to Eric about, but.
What do you do for an encore after a 6 Love Songs return? But anyway,
Make
you know,
another album and
it's-
tour on it.
Right. But you know, I don't know if you went last year or the year before, the 2022, 2023, there was a sort of fun distilled oldies thing that was going around. It did have songs from Tarm, from Holiday, from Get Lost, from Smooth Bus. There was a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And that was in an
Which
effort
is what people normally do on tour.
deliver that. Deliver good stuff.
Well, except that we were also doing 10 songs from the new album. It's just that since the new album was quickies, they were all 15 seconds long.
Of course, you could do what Sparks did many years ago and just do one record each night over the course of.
Kraftwerk are doing that at Disney Hall
Right.
next month.
Well, put that in your back
Yeah,
pocket.
we thought this was tiring, yeah.
That is also definitely not going to happen.
Question down here, yes.
Thank you for hosting this, and thank you both for being here. Thank you for the music.
Our pleasure.
Really, and I get the impression that this is probably not the most fun experience for you, Stephin, if I can call you that. You're very
George.
funny and witty, and we all know that from your lyrics. And now, you know, at least for me, seeing you here now and looking forward to tomorrow. Can you talk to us about comedy or humor? Because I assume that it's something important in your life because you have an excellent sense of timing and wit. Is that something that you can share with us?
I grew up on Bob Dylan. My mother was a big Dylan fan, and I learned very early on from Bob Dylan that the source of humor is just letting rhyme be rhyme. Rhyme is inherently silly, and it will generally lead you to silly places. And the basic thing to do in songwriting is to try not to be silly with rhymes, but all you have to do is sort of relax that a bit, and you discover funny stuff, because rhyme just leads you straight to the funny stuff.
Question right here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the Grace synthesizers, so I was going to ask, where did you get Grace Jones t-shirt that I saw you in last week? That was amazing.
That is a JCRT creation. Half of it is Grace Jones, and half of it is Man Ray sculpture, which is a found object. It's an iron with spikes sticking out of it.
Yeah,
I forget the title of it.
I fucking loved it, man, because I was sat in the front row last week and I was like, I fucking love that.
JCRT.
JCRT.
Write it in your phone. Look it up.
There's one right here.
You talk a lot in the film about being interested in soundtracks and being interested in film. Is there a film out there that you would love to get a crack at doing the soundtrack for?
Do you mean a silent film that I could in fact do the soundtrack for, or do you mean redoing someone else's?
A dealer's choice. Not necessarily a commentary on someone else's work, just like you would have a good time.
So, I did actually do a new theme from Meerkat Manor, and I feel like Meerkat Manor, the TV show, is grossly underscored, and really it should be considered a silent film that goes on for season after season. I would love to spend the rest of my life doing nothing but scoring Meerkat Manor.
And 10,000 leagues. Oh, sorry.
Hi. evolution of the band and your relationship over these years. And I was wondering, what if, for better or for worse, what of your 18-year-old personalities, characters, relationship do you retain now? What do you think you have? What do you think you've lost? For better or for worse?
My girlish figure.
Acne. Acne and your girlish figure.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think that anybody in this room would find it hard to remember if they're similar to or not similar to themselves 30 or 40 years ago. It's hard to have that objectivity.
I know I have been told a lot that I'm vastly nicer than I was when I was a teenager. It's hard to be nice when you're a teenager. I think being nice is an acquired skill, and I don't know that I've ever met any nice teenagers.
Actually, it's an interesting thing you're saying. When you were working for Time Out, you had a revelation that really famous people, like the Bee Gees,
Right.
were incredibly nice.
I interviewed Robin Gibb.
Yeah.
And Robin Gibb had been interviewed daily since he was a small child, because they were child stars. And he was probably the nicest person I've ever spoken to in my life. And roughly the same time, I interviewed the Spice Girls.
I remember this was right after their star ascendance. They hadn't been famous for that long.
It was the first day,
something.
it was their first day in New York.
Right.
So I was one of the first Americans to ever have to interview the Spice Girls. And the first one I interviewed was the one justly nicknamed Scary Spice, LP. And
they were not nice.
Generally, when you have been doing interviews for more than a week, you encounter someone who is having difficulty with the technology, making the phone recorder work, and that sort of thing. It's completely normal. Happens all the time. She didn't know that. So she made the cardinal error of accusing me of being unprofessional. I'm like, well, you are the third interview I've done today, and I would say that you're the one who's being unprofessional. You just don't know it because you are unprofessional. Have they ever paid you yet? I believe I said.
I don't know if you can find that review.
Because
beautiful.
no, they haven't.
Do you remember your review?
Oh yeah, but I just spent the most boring half an hour of my life interviewing the Spice Girls.
Well, what I remember that's brilliant about that review is that he just verbatim quotes what he says and what they say, and what he says and what they say, and he says things that are specifically whatever, like tell me about this song, whatever, and they say, we love New York. It's like non sequiturs, and they just don't respond to him. And so he asks all these questions, and then they just make these like bland non-responses, and he's like, I'm just gonna print that verbatim. And it would just make them look so dumb. I mean, I'm sure they're actually not that way, but it was just hilarious to read it. Ooh, this is good, this is really good.
I think when you're casting something like the Spice Girls, you cast for dumb, deliberately. This is meant with compassion. No one would really want to be in that situation. It's like reality television. They don't have smart people on reality television because smart people know not to do that.
Take a question right here.
Thanks for saying your curious for Robin Gibbs, because he's actually from where I'm from, in South Manchester, and he is one of the nicest people. Really, really nice guy.
Was, unfortunately.
But I want you to give this some really, really good thought now, guys. What type of dog breed would you be? Because I've been in New York for a bit, and you guys have really big, exciting dogs.
Well,
so
I have two Chihuahua Dachshund mixes, and I think the next time I get a dog, I'll probably go back to straight head Chihuahua, because the Chihuahua is me.
How so?
we look into each other's eyes and we know exactly what the other one is thinking, because we have essentially the same brain. Claudia's a cat person, you can't ask her this question.
Once when I was in high school, I made this great film called How People Are Like Their Dogs, and I went into Central Park and I shot people's faces and I just shot their dogs. And then I shot people's faces and I shot their dogs. And it was really fun because it was all in camera edit. There was like no, I didn't have to do anything. But
if you still have that, we can make a video.
we could, and it's really great because people look so different from their dogs, but you can, what he said, you know, you can see this, like, you see this like enormous person and this teeny dog, you see this little tiny person and this big dog, and then you realize like, oh yeah, I see it, I see how it worked. You know, it's really
They
strange.
have the same eyelashes.
They have the same spirit. It's really cool.
Take one more from the audience.
So question for Claudia. So in the documentary, when Stephen's going to move to California and those, you start to, where's my hot word? You start to think, yeah, it is sad, and you feel like there's this big part of your life that's going to change in a fundamental way, maybe go away. And it sounds like
it's ironic because she had moved to San Francisco herself only a few years earlier, so it wasn't all that disruptive, as it turned out.
Got it. That might change the question a little bit, but I'll ask it anyway. You know, what were you thinking the future might look like? You started to go down that path a little bit and talking about it. Did you have any ideas that you thought, well, maybe I'll do this or that? And is there anything you got excited
If
about?
you tell me what year you moved to LA, I can answer this question.
2006.
Wow. I was actually in LA from 95 to 96, it was 10 years earlier, but 11 years earlier. But in 2006, I might have been thinking, hard to say. I think I had many false starts. I thought I was gonna be an academic, went to PhD, but that was over by 2006. I think I just spun around circles for a little while. Having trouble actually quitting. And then we started hitting the road a lot. We toured in 08, 10, and 12. So I think it was just a lot of tour stuff. Yeah, I'm having trouble actually putting it together. I think it was just kind of like, oh, you're out there, ah! But then we made a lot of records. There's all those non-synth records. And then some point in the teens, I decided to become a social worker. And I'm now a social worker.
Oh.
I can be your therapist. Thank you. So there was a sort of a second career thing, but there was a lot of false start second career things. There was all sorts of like, maybe I'll go do that. But I'm still also this. I'm the manager. Still.
What would your second career be, Stephen?
Planetarium director.
I wanted to be a planetarium artist when I was in high school, and I went to the various planetariums and asked about how to break into being a planetarium artist, and they said, fuck off.
That dream.
Yeah.
Well, I mean the same. When we were in high school, we were in a band called the Zinnias, and it had a song that went, all day at the planetarium, watching the world go round, 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 with a humming sound.
I don't remember the round part.
Well, yes, there were other parts of that song, but that's the ending.
Oh, okay.
I have one quick story. The second Somerville show, you had threatened the audience. We're not going to do this, I promise, but you had threatened the audience halfway through the second night of the Somerville show that you would perform as an encore John Cage's 433.
This was in the year 2000.
Yes.
Just so you know, this was a long time ago, this story.
And
we did.
And he performed.
We did do
the entire band came out and performed John Cage's 433 in the Somerville Theater. If you don't know what that is, look it up in the computer in your
We got a
phone.
record deal with Gonson.
It's the only time I've ever heard 433 performed. And when Stephen came in, I asked if he would indulge me and perform 433 right now, and he very swiftly said no. So we won't be leaving you with 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence.
But we did do it at the Summer Theater. That was,
There was a heckler.
There was a heckler, yeah.
Which is actually, of a piece with the usual behavior of an audience.
At a cage.
At 4:33.
They get uncomfortable.
It's 100 people want to listen to the soundscape, and one person wants everyone else to listen to him. Always male.
This is my last question for the night. This is this incredible interview with Stephin and Daniel Handler that was released with 3-box set. And at the end, Daniel says, okay, your turn. What are the questions you wish you'd been asked? And the second to last question is, what do you want to hear that you want to ask yourself? What do you want to hear from popular music in the next century, being the 21st century? So, has any of those desires been satiated?
Did I respond to those questions?
No, the response was an asterisk.
I see.
So we could leave it at that if you'd like to respond with an asterisk.
I am actually quite excited about recent developments in popular music. Namely, Lil Nas X and Beyonce dominating
country music.
charts.
Yeah.
This is the best thing that could possibly happen in popular music.
Second to ABBA. That was last century.
In this century, yes.
Great answer. Thank you all very, very much for coming. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.